Sir Hudson, in his cunning, had recourse to an extraordinary mode of sending over the wages to Suzarelli, Crisciolo, and Maresca, which last, in the fullness of his heart, he used to call his champion su campione. They were paid in gold, which was generally sent in loaves of bread, that the cautious Sir Hudson had baked in his own house, and put the money in with his own hands, lest his spies should be discovered by any spies of the Neapolitan police. The loaves had the appearance of bread for the use of the boatmen while fishing at night. As soon as they were landed, they were brought up by Suzarelli to Salicetti, the latter insisting that every kind of correspondence should be first submitted to him. By means of Suzarelli, the French government became acquainted with the real destination of the army under General Mackenzie Fraser and the fleet under Sir J. Duckworth. Suzarelli even offered to procure Sir Hudson some soldiers to recruit the Corsican regiment in Capri, and some, I believe, were actually dispatched over to him to corrupt the foreigners under his command. While the attack upon Capri was meditating, Suzarelli had the art to persuade Sir Hudson Lowe that it was meant against the little island of Ponza, which the English frigate ambuscaded, and the greatest part of the gunboats were accordingly set to defend, thus leaving the passage to Capri defended only by a small force. To encourage this belief, an embargo was laid upon all vessels in Naples, with some fishing boats manned with persons in the employ of Salicetti were sent out at night, purposely to fall in with some of Sir Hudson's boats, and to assure them that the expedition was meant for Ponza, in order to embroil the British government and Sir Hudson with Queen Caroline. Letters were fabricated by a Neapolitan called Don Antonio, as if from her to Cassetti, whilst others purporting to be written by Sir Hudson were forged by an English schoolmaster residing at Naples, these last confidentially stating that the object of the English was to get the royal family out of Sicily and send them to England on a pension, that they might subsequently take possession of the country, and the first containing complaints of Sir Hudson by the Queen, and invectives against him and the English. Those wretches also, to afford amusement to Salicetti and to themselves, used sometimes to create a quarrel between Sir Hudson and the Prince of Canossa, who commanded in Ponza, by means of forged letters, abusing each other, which they caused to fall into their hands. They usually assembled at night to enjoy themselves, drinking and laughing at their dupe, Sir Hudson, whose health they toasted out of derision, whilst in the midst of their revels they were hatching new means of deceiving him. Even Salicetti himself sometimes went to listen and laugh at their schemes. Sometime in 1807 or 1808, Suzarelli was to go to Vienna to execute a mission for Salicetti, and determined to make Sir Hudson Lowe pay the expense of the journey. The chief object of this mission was to sound the English ambassador and Pozzo di Borgo. Then at Vienna, Suzarelli went to Sir Hudson Lowe, whom he persuaded that at Vienna he could procure information of the greatest importance, and obtained from him 6,000 francs for the expense of his journey, etc., with strong letters of recommendation. He then went to Vienna, where he was very well received by the English ambassador, from whom he procured some important intelligence. He also obtained from him an order to have the salaries paid which were given to other English agents and officers who resided on the continent. With Pozzo di Borgo, he did not succeed, as the wary Corsican could not believe that it was possible for him to deceive Salicetti as he pretended to have done. Suzarelli, in trying to ingratiate himself into Pozzo di Borgo's confidence, boasted of his influence over Salicetti, saying, "Io faccio intendere a Salicetti tutto, zio Salicetti Levaggio. I make Salicetti believe whatever I like. A me tu conti questo. Dost thou tell me this?" replied Pozzo di Borgo, bowing down to the ground. All the art of Suzarelli could not extract a single secret from him, although the letter of recommendation given by Sir Hudson Lowe representing him as a man in whom every confidence could be placed. And in the passport, which he received afterwards from the English ambassador, he was styled Il Signore Barone Sozarelli. On his return to Naples, he was asked by Salicetti, "Ebbene, cosa hai tirato de Pozzo di Borgo?" "Well, what hast thou extracted from Pozzo di Borgo?" "Ah," replied Suzarelli, shrugging up his shoulders, "Due verbi insieme non si guadagna niente." Two rogues together, nothing is gained. He then told Salicetti that Pozzo di Borgo had sent his compliments to him. Salicetti replied, "Suzarelli, I know that thou hast told me many lies, but this is the greatest that ever has escaped thy lips, accustomed as they are to lying. I well know Pozzo di Borgo. I have been the means of banishing him from this country and prescribing him, so that through my means, if caught in France, he would be shot. Thinkest thou, then, that so proud a man as Pozzo di Borgo and a Corsican would send his compliments to one who has done him so much injury? None but the meanest and vilest of men would be capable of it. And I well know Pozzo di Borgo to be one of the proudest on earth. In fact, Suzarelli acknowledged afterwards that he had invented it. Suzarelli had at one time persuaded Sir Hudson Lowe to promise to come over to Naples and meet him in a little house on the beach belonging to Maresca, where he would have seen Salicetti in disguise, who had decided not to seize him, as he conceived that it would be difficult to find another governor who would allow himself to be gulled so egregiously, and would besides have prevented them from deriving any more services from Suzarelli. "Vorrei vedere questo colonnello tuo," said Salicetti. "Famos vedere. Un uomo può scarsi ingannare per canchi mesma di liaziarsi condogliare a questo segno per tanti anni visioni essere ben bestia. I should like to see this colonel of thine. Let me see him. A man may allow himself to be deceived for some months, but he who suffers himself to be humbugged so grossly for so many years must be a beast indeed." "Oh," replied Suzarelli with an air of gravity, "non è tanto bestia, è talentito mio. No, quite so great a blockhead is my cleverness." Something, however, induced Lowe to change his intentions. Murat being desirous of seizing all the English merchandise, of which there was a great quantity of Naples, under the name of American, and at the same time not wishing to quarrel with the Americans, employed Suzarelli to find out the means of ascertaining what was really American and what was not. Suzarelli went to Sir Hudson Lowe, whom he persuaded that he should be able to render essential service to the British government if he were possessed of the means of distinguishing the English passports from the real American ones. Sir Hudson gave him two, one real and American, and the other counterfeit and English, showing him how to distinguish between them, the only difference being in the stamp. In the English, the inessential was exactly in the center of the stamp. In the American, though the letter was the same, it was placed a little underneath. Furnished with these, Suzarelli departed, and in the beginning of 1810, a general seizure of the ships was made by Murat, and all those found with passports in the manner described above were confiscated. While Salicetti lived, but few were seized, as he wished to keep Suzarelli on terms with Lowe. It was by means of the money acquired by the seizure and confiscation of the above-mentioned vessels that King Joachim, in a great measure, equipped and paid the expedition undertaken against Sicily in the year 1811. Salicetti became acquainted with almost everything that passed at the court of Palermo by means of the Duchess of C, with whom he intrigued. She was daughter to the Prince of C, wife to the Sicilian ambassador in Blank, and prima donna to Carolina, and her confidant. Her husband wrote her an account of every circumstance that took place at the court of Blank. She hated the French, and Salicetti pretended that he was a Republican and detested the French party. He established a correspondence with her mother, who communicated everything to her, for the disclosure of which she received 1,000 scudi per month from Salicetti. In 1808, or 9, a Neapolitan named Mosca, and in rank a captain, was sent over from Capri by Queen Caroline to assassinate Napoleon's brother Joseph, at that time King of Naples. In order to stimulate him to the deed, she gave him a lock of her hair and a letter in her own handwriting engaging to make him a colonel. As soon as what he promised was effected, independent of this, he received a letter from the Princess V.T., confident to Queen Caroline, specifically pointing out what he was to do, viz. To rid his country of the usurper, and giving him every assurance that the good queen, his mistress, would fulfill all her promises to him. He accordingly left Capri in a felucca provided with all the necessary passports, in one of which, signed by an English officer, there were instructions requiring that all British officers should afford every assistance to the bearer, who was proceeding on a secret mission for the good of the service of King Ferdinand. He landed at Molino, near to a country house of Joseph's, and his intention was to have assassinated him while walking in the garden. While lurking about in expectation of his victim, he met with a girl whose appearance struck him, and to whom he offered some pieces of gold to consent to his wishes. Not succeeding in this, he told her that he had come over from the queen to execute a grand object, and that if she would consent to his desires, he would make her a great woman. The girl became alarmed and would not consent, notwithstanding the sight of his gold and the promises he made. Information was given to the police, who proceeded immediately to the spot. 2 of Mosca's associates were killed, and he himself seized, after a desperate resistance, the letters, the lock of hair, the arms which were found upon him, and the girl were produced against him before a military commission. He said in his defense that he merely had come over to throw himself at Joseph's feet and ask pardon and permission to return to Naples. After the condemnation, however, he confessed his real intentions. He died with great courage and refused to disclose the name of his accomplices. Sometime after this, Queen Caroline set over a Neapolitan apothecary named Gerardi, or Visconti, and his 2 sons to assassinate Salicetti. For this purpose he went to Ponza, from whence he proceeded to Capri, and from Capri to Naples, where he landed at night, taking with him a sort of catamaran in shape and size similar to a ship's buoy. He managed matters so well as to get admittance into Salicetti's house, and even to hire a room under the stairs as an apothecary's store, in which he placed his machine. Salicetti, who had been at a party at the house of Princess Blank, did not return until about 1 o'clock, alighted from his carriage, and, according to his usual custom, bound up the stairs with great quickness. This saved his life, for the incendiary's machine did not explode until he had passed through 4 rooms of his suite of apartments. Cipriani was with him at the moment of the explosion. Upwards of 30 of the rooms were either blown to pieces or materially injured, and the palace nearly reduced to ruins, under which was buried one of Salicetti's daughters, now the Duchess of Blank, where she remained for some hours, but at last was discovered by Cipriani, hearing the moans of some person. While proceeding on in the direction of the voice, he tumbled through the floor down to the room below, fortunately without sustaining any injury, which brought him near to the sufferer. An alarm was given, and after considerable difficulty the young lady was extricated, half dead, from under the massive ruins. Some of the rafters had formed a cross over her, which was the means of saving her life. Gerardi and his sons were arrested and tried. The sons shot, but the father, in consequence of his advanced age, escaped with perpetual imprisonment. Immediately after this event, Sir Hudson Lowe wrote a letter to Salicetti, professing his entire ignorance of it and his detestation of similar attempts. Salicetti, suspecting the drum major of the regiment of Viro, then in Naples, to be an agent of Queen Caroline, employed Suzarelli to discover it. Accordingly, Suzarelli, with whom the drum major was intimately acquainted, embraced an opportunity of addressing him one day while he was walking about looking very discontentedly, and commenced by inveighing against the tyranny to which they were subjected, and how happy he should be to get away from a place where no one's life was safe for a moment. Professing his intention of effecting his escape as soon as he could do it without running the risk of being seized and shot by the police, of which he said he was in great dread. The poor drum major heartily joined them, professed his own disgust at the government they were under and his attachment to that of Caroline, adding that he would also get away as soon as possible. Upon the Suzarelli proposed to him to induce 20 or 30 of his regiment to enter into Caroline's or the English service, telling him to make them sign a paper purporting their readiness to enter and giving him $200 to forward his plans, with the promise that as soon as they were ready he would procure them a passage over to Capri. The drum major went amongst his friends in the regiment and used all his endeavors to inveigle some to enter into his projects. He could not, however, succeed with more than 10 or 12 who were so illiterate that they could neither read nor write, and he was obliged to write their names himself, along with those of his 2 sons. He then met Suzarelli, according to appointment, acquainted him how far he had succeeded, and showed him the list of names. Suzarelli communicated this to Salicetti, recommending him at the same time to wait until he had procured more victims. Salicetti rejected this, replying that it was the business of the police by every means to discover traitors, but not to encourage and make them. On the contrary, that his duty was to nip everything of the kind in the bud and not knowingly to allow such practices to be carried on. The drum major and his associates were immediately arrested, the paper with the names found upon him, and a short time afterwards himself, his sons, and some of the others were hanged. Suzarelli lay concealed for several days, and then went to see the widow of the unfortunate drum major, told her that her husband had nearly been his ruin, that he had come to him to request assistance in getting away from Naples, which he and his friendship had promised to afford, but that all had been discovered, that he had been thrown into prison and would have been hanged if, luckily for him, a countryman of his had not been in Salicetti's office, who had interested himself to save his life. This he told so plausibly that the poor woman implicitly believed what he said, looked upon him as a benefactor, and ever afterwards, when in trouble, used to have recourse to Suzarelli for advice, who occasionally gave her $1 or two. 2 or 3 days after this abominable treachery, Cipriani said to Suzarelli, "What a sclerato, miscreant thou art, Suzarelli! How canst thou reconcile to thyself being the cause of the death of these poor fellows who are hanged through thy deceit?" "Bah," replied Suzarelli, "sono porci Napoleonacci. They're Neapolitan hogs." In 1809, Salicetti, wishing to discover when the packet from England was expected to arrive in Sicily, and Suzarelli to work upon Colonel Lowe, Suzarelli accordingly wrote to the colonel, stating that as the news they had received from England by the last papers had been very distressing, and had produced bad effects by discouraging those partisans of the English who believed it, that even though those who did not credit it to the full extent thought that something unfavorable had occurred, he therefore requested the colonel to communicate immediately to him any news that he might have received, that he might be able to keep up the spirits of the party. Sir Hudson Lowe replied that he was very right to use every exertion not to allow the loyal sentiments of the faithful subjects of King Ferdinand to be lowered. But at that moment he had no authentic intelligence to communicate, that however he expected to a certainty that the packet from England would arrive in a few days, when he would take care to forward to him forthwith every intelligence that was favorable. As soon as Suzarelli made this known to Salicetti, a privateer called Lardito was dispatched to cruise between Sardinia and Blank. In a few days actually fell ill with the English packet, which I believe was called the Success, which she took. The mail was thrown overboard, but in the hurry it hung by one of the cords which attached it, and the privateer's men kept up such a fire of musketry that the crew of the packet durst not approach to cut it away, and it was taken. And it were dispatches giving some directions concerning an attack which was meditated upon Corfu. with some letters from the Admiralty to the Admiral relative to the blockade of that island. Cipriani described the packet as having been commanded by a young man about 20 and manned with 14 men. Suzarelli extorted large sums of money from Colonel Lowe under various pretexts, such as indemnifying his agents for their imprisonment, and as bribes stated by him to have been given to the police to prevent his own arrestation. He was a most debauched character, but a man of talent, of prepossessing appearance and manner. He tried at times to deceive Salicetti with wonderful stories and invented schemes to obtain money from him. Salicetti on these occasions has been known to say, "Vai a far credere questo al colonnello tuo, che è un coglione a me non puoi che ti conosco. Canst thou say at once that thou hast need of money?" With a view to embroil the English government with the Sicilian, a letter was fabricated by Suzarelli in imitation of Colonel Lowe's handwriting. In the course of conversation with Cassetti, Suzarelli observed that Queen Caroline was playing the devil in Sicily and endeavoring to destroy all the English. This excited Cassetti's curiosity and caused him to make many inquiries from Suzarelli, who, after many seeming difficulties, replied that he had a letter from the colonel to that effect, which Cassetti, with great eagerness, asked to see. Suzarelli, after much persuasion, allowed him to look at it. It stigmatized the Neapolitans as a set of wretches without faith, counseled by Suzarelli to beware of them, asserted that Queen Caroline had formed a plot to assassinate all the English in Sicily, that the barons had everything ready to take up arms and to massacre or drive them off the island, concluding with declaring that in consequence of this discovery, the English government had resolved to seize upon the Queen and take the island under their own protection. Cassetti begged hard to be allowed to retain the letter, which Suzarelli refused, but gave him a copy, promising that he would consider of the propriety of giving him the original. He then went to Salicetti, to whom he related that Cassetti had taken the bait, added that he had promised to consider the propriety of letting him have the original, not to neglect taking every precaution. Salicetti desired Suzarelli to send for the English schoolmaster in their employment, who counterfeited handwriting to perfection, to ascertain if the colonel's handwriting had been well imitated by Suzarelli. On looking at it, he declared that it was the cheat that would be discovered. He then was ordered to copy the letter and imitate Sir Hudson Lowe's handwriting so perfectly that the latter was subsequently deceived by it himself. The next morning, Suzarelli gave it to Cassetti, instructing him at the same time not to show or lose it, as he said his life depended upon it. Cassetti immediately hurried off to Palermo and showed the letter to the Queen, who in a rage sent for Sir John Stuart, who was then at Palermo, and presented him the counterfeit letter, insisting that a most summary punishment might be inflicted upon Colonel Lowe for having dared to make use of her name in such a manner. Sir John Stuart immediately sent to Colonel Lowe to demand an explanation. On being shown the letter, his handwriting was so well counterfeited that he acknowledged it to be his, but declared that he was not conscious of ever having written such a letter. At the time that Suzarelli forged the letter, the police purposely sent out some boats and seized the colonel's boat coming over from Capri. The next day, Suzarelli wrote to the colonel to inform him that the boat had been seized and that he did not know what intelligence he had forwarded to him, as all had fallen into the hands of the police, who had possessed themselves of the boat.